Hi, I'm Katie, and this is the Free Art and Design School podcast, web series, whatever. I have another wonderful guest here if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Marina. I run a tiny store slash, I guess, my studio slash just artistic outlet space. It's called Studio Echo Marina, which is like a play on my name. Plus, like, I started out in watercolor, so it's kind of like that type of thing.
Got it.
What I do.
And you're a multi-talented artist. You do your own ceramics, you sell ceramics, you sell watercolor paint that you mold yourself. I'm sort of curious how you got into doing this because I know you have a background in art and art history.
Oh, I love art and art history. I actually did minor in modern history,
Oh, wow.
which is like modern history, but I took a lot of Roman history, so like classical stuff, and it's like, but they still let me have my modern history kind of whatever, thing that they kind of like, oh, she had so many credits, so we gotta give her something type of thing. Yeah, that was me.
That explains some of the motifs that you use in your ceramics and all the
Right.
kind of like history and like symbolism that you use. What made you want to be an artist?
I actually never thought I would be one because like I've been discouraged. I mean, like so many people are, right? It's like, oh, but you've been like born like a century too late to be an artist because like, you wanted to be an artist, you could totally could have been doing that like I don't know, 1890s. That's when like women could do it because like you couldn't, do many other things.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I kind of was discouraged from that. But I had like a lot of artistic people in my life at the same time. So it's like everyone kind of ended up doing something different,
Mhm.
but they've always had this, I guess, ability to dream or see things in a specific way. And that's something I kind of got from them. And so, like, throughout the times and things I've done in my life, like, kind of followed me. But, like, so I listened up on some of your interviews, and one of the interview was with you. And you were like saying how, like, a lot of things were just like when you were doing them, just didn't really feel right.
Yeah.
So kind of similar to my kind of, I guess, where I am right now is kind of like the most anxious I've been, but at the
Oh
same time,
no.
kind of the happiest I've been
Yeah. And the work you make
professionally.
is really beautiful. Like you have such a wonderful knowledge of pigments and just the work that you create also like as a painter with your own paints is really incredible. And I think one of the downsides of being an artist is when you're doing the thing that you love the most, it's also not necessarily the most stable thing that you could be doing, which I guess is what plays into what you were talking about society and social norms. What sort of gives you the courage to keep going? I know you said that you had a community around you of artists.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like weird for me because like I was not thinking I'm gonna meet so many people who are like, oh, I can like I understand where you come from, like visually. And I was like, oh, like I'm probably gonna be the only one just like showing things and like no one's really it's like I feel like that's an artist thing, right? Like everyone is like, oh, I don't know if someone's gonna get it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So that was me. I was like, I don't know if it's just like for me, which is fine, I'm gonna do it for me. But then just people came around and that's yeah, I guess that's the community.
Yeah, I think there's a huge, it's honestly crazy how big the watercolor community is and how big the ceramics community is on Instagram. There don't seem to be many people who do uniquely what you do, which is you do both things so well and all sorts of other interests that you have. I'm
People
sort of,
get confused. They're like, so wait, what are you doing? It's like I do it all.
yeah, I'm sort of interested in how you developed both skills. And maybe if you could talk about your practice as a paint maker and as a ceramicist and sort of your philosophies on making different kinds of work.
Right. Well, wait, I'm gonna show what I do. So yeah, it's one of my pieces, one of the last ones I think I've
Oh,
done.
it's so pretty. It's porcelain,
Um,
right?
yeah, this one is porcelain. So I've started kind of like it's very finicky. So I finally started to be like, and it's also more expensive than regular clay. So I'm like, if I'm gonna mess it up, like I have to really kind of like work at it. So maybe I will not mess it up anyhow. Um, so I started out because I just generally couldn't really find something like that on the market for
Yeah,
myself.
I feel that.
So that's what, like, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of extremely wonderful makers out there. This is super niche, and I understand and I acknowledge that. And there are a couple of artists who do the same. There is someone, Caitlin Bongers or some, I don't remember the last name. She's Dutch, I think, out of Netherlands. And there is a couple of other people, but she's kind of the most well known, I would imagine, right? But also her style is different. I feel like we both are kind of whimsical, but I think I'm a different whimsical than she is. But that's the thing, like, honestly, besides her at that time, which was like a few years ago, I don't know if anyone did anything much, you know?
Yeah.
And so I had these super pretty old palettes from like Winsor Newton and blah blah. They're a little far away, so like I can't really show, but they're like classic, big,
Yeah.
white, pretty, like stamps on the backs, and like, and something about that, like, they were not very ornate, but that kind of, not just like a general clean cut, not like Scandinavia. I have nothing against Scandinavia, but like
It's not
it's not,
minimalist.
yeah, it's not like, I don't know, it's like not something that you're gonna buy a lot of and be like, well, I'm gonna go through all of them and like throw them out. It's like more like an heirloom piece in a way, you know, like that's what I wanted.
Yeah. One of my friends who I interviewed is a jewelry maker, and she said that she started making jewelry because she couldn't find anything on the market that looked exactly like what she wanted. And so she wanted to try to create it herself. And
Yeah.
I see that in your work. Like your pieces are so unique and like really don't look like anything else. It's like I personally, now it's I think a little better than it was 5 years ago, but I've struggled finding watercolor palettes that seem like my style or something that I would like to work with or see on my desk every single day or want to pass on. So I really admire that in you to just be like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to, do it. Is it something similar with you in paints that like you wanted your own individual colors, or is it different?
Yeah. It's like a long story. Sorry, so many stories. I'm like, I talked a
That's
lot.
why you're here.
But I also don't talk enough, I feel like,
Yeah.
So I don't like explaining stuff. But yeah, so I did art school, but I'm originally from Europe. And so for me, like when I talk art school, like I talk prep
Mhm.
before going to getting bachelor's and master's degree, right? So the way it is kind of like in my mindset, it's like you must go through like 3 to 4 years. So like you juggle high school and you do those 3 to 4 years of art school. Or if you're a music kid, you do music school. Like that's how it works. And like it's like with a goal, you're gonna try and end up in an art school like for your bachelor's. So unless you're legacy, that's how it works. Like very few people can get in if you don't do like art school
Yeah.
in high school. So that's what I did. And so I was like training to get into an art academy.
Mm.
So last minute I was like, no, I'm gonna do Asian studies Japanese.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah. Which made my mom more happy than she was before because she didn't want me to do arts.
Sure.
Because she comes from that mindset, just like you're not a rich lady who's like has a rich husband who can like
Right.
just hang out with arts. So I was like, yeah, I don't know, it was something about it. I think I lost my kind of sight of it.
Mhm.
Because like I was working with an artist at some point, and I was just like, I don't know, do I like want to own a gallery? Do I like, it's kind of like, it's a very hard thing to decide when you're 18.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So Japanese was because I read manga and stuff. So I was like, yay.
That's
Did
so
not
funny.
graduate from there either. So, um, but yeah, it was just like I quit. And when I quit art, I really quit it. Like I didn't touch my brush. I actually didn't own a brush, I think, for like 10 years.
Oh my
So I'm in like my mid 30s now. So I think I was like, yeah, I was like around your age. So that's when I kind of started picking it up again. And I
God.
met my school teacher, my art school teacher at the time, and she was like asking because she's like, I apparently was one of the kids she thought I'm really gonna end up in art school for my bachelor's. And she's like, are you doing art? And I was like, to be honest, no, like I
Oh,
haven't really, right? And she's like, that's totally fine. That's how it kind of works throughout your life. Like you stop it and you pick it up again.
yeah.
And then I picked it up again. Yeah.
Wow. That's really insane. Like such a winding path. And then you ended up right back where you were interested.
Here I am.
Do you find that art has been fulfilling for you, like in an exciting way?
I think it has been a therapy first and foremost, because that's how I picked it up again. Yeah, and it was just, it was something I was like, I'm not gonna invest in it. I'm not gonna buy stuff.
Yeah.
So what I did, I ended up going to school in Rome, Italy,
Wow.
and I ended up studying international affairs with intention to becoming a diplomat. But I also took art classes, sorry, because
Oh
like
my God.
that's what you have to do. You got to take an art class.
Yeah.
But like Rome, you gotta really take an art class. Uh,
Wow. That's so cool.
so it was fun. It was tough. It was, it was a lot. It was a lot of joy, a lot of like tough times, I guess, like emotionally. It was kind of reliving that, kind of emotions. Like I didn't pursue it, like, but
Yeah.
I love it. And like just being amazed how like after 10 years, like my hand could still draw like that. That was like amazing. I was like, how can I still do this? But yeah, like totally just like pencil. That's
Yeah.
all. Like I did pencil because I'm not going to invest in it. And then years after that, I realized I want to come back to watercolor. And that's when I realized the watercolors that I used as like what 16-year-old, so like almost 20 years ago now, they're
Wow.
really different from like what you can buy now.
Crazy. Can you talk a
Yeah,
little
and
bit about that? Like I know a lot about pigments. It's actually my favorite topic ever is pigment and color. And one of the many reasons that I wanted to kind of ask you about your life is like it's such a niche field. And
it
almost
is.
everyone who isn't a painter knows nothing about pigments and their history, both natural and synthetic. And like,
Right.
how did you learn about that? Just based on like using it and getting really curious, or what was sort of your
Mm,
to becoming a paint maker specifically?
right. It's so for me it was like an odd thing that I remember using. I don't remember the brand, but I used these mm, like semi school kid type of watercolors, so semi professional that had like a very distinct scent of honey. like
Oh,
like I could, especially in yellows, like ochre, lemon yellow, something like that. Like it totally had that tiny like scent to it.
wow.
I was like, I don't really think there's honey in any of this shit that I'm using right now. And so I started kind of looking on Etsy. There are like a couple of makers I found. Some of them don't make paint anymore. There was someone out of Poland, I think. And I was like, I ordered from her, and that stuff was so close to what I remember. And I was like, well, I've also been told how to make watercolors back in the day. Cause like when you're being introduced to different medium, they kind of tell you like what's in there, right? Like oil paints have this, and then acrylics have that, whatever. So I was like, all right, I have like 2, 3 ingredients. Let's do it. And like the first batch was really bad because it was like not that easy. But yeah, I just kept on making. I kept on buying from other people. I think I've been one of my favorite still standing stores is still there. There is this maker slash professor out of Vermont, Christina. She's Italian.
Oh, cool.
And so she was my first one. And there was someone from Netherlands as well, Lisa, who's still in the business, LM Arts, I think.
Mm,
Yeah, those were my two people, first ones, and I'm still with them like for many
wow.
years.
That's crazy. And so you sort of sought out the community because I
Yeah,
guess I mean, the way things are now is, there's book talk, so there's an automatic community for those people. But I feel like, you know, 5, 10 years ago, things were really, really different.
I also think the pandemic probably accelerated it. I was kind of very late to that game. I was like, I was not sure I wanted to monetize on it for a long time because it's just like it's kind of this vulnerable spot you put yourself in
Yeah.
whenever you want to share the art that you create.
Oh, absolutely. But your work is so good, so I'm glad you monetized it. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I have 2 palettes from you on the way, and I'm blown
Yay.
away by how beautiful the colors are. Um, what oh, I was also gonna ask, so you are sort of unlike other paint makers in that you also sell paint in your own ceramic pots, and I'm wondering why you started doing that. Was it like an anti-plastic thing, or just you were like, I'm
Yeah.
both? Like,
It's kind of aesthetic things. Like a lot of things I do are aesthetic. I'm not gonna lie, it is what it is. Like I am not into like I'm into like slow art,
mhm,
make things kind of thoughtfully, make them to last, and just kind of like I don't like buying shit ton of things
yeah, absolutely.
because I feel like that's like the same as like fast fashion. That's how it like all works. Like, and I do have a large collection of handmade paints by others. So like I understand like it's like I'm saying that, but am I really doing that? But at the same time, like I feel that if I find something I like, I stick to it. But also if there are things that are made nicely and beautifully and kind of sort of like it used to be in the 19th century, kind of like beginning of 20th, how like people didn't have too many things but they're like really well made and
Mhm,
they're beautiful.
yeah,
And I feel like that kind of on its own also kind of fights that I need more, I need more, I need more, just because like if someone buys my stuff I'm unable to produce a lot of it,
right. Yeah.
right? So but also plastic is odd. So like I don't know how long you've been around the watercolor community or like been kind of looking at it.
Literally like 2, 3 years, like not that long at all.
Well, there was like a moment when everyone started switching to 3D printed pans. I remember
And
that.
I remember. Yeah.
And they're not great. They're not very compostable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a problem. So at the end of the day, the shitty plastic pans are better because
Yeah.
they're sturdy. You can wash them out, but people are not going to do that. And so it's like, well, why don't we come back the way things used to be, which used to be porcelain pans up until like 1940s, I think, 50s,
Wow. Okay.
40s, I would say. So it's like, what can we do that? So I just started making with my two hands.
Wow. And that actually leads me into one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is like your interest in vintage art supplies. I think often we create so many problems for ourselves with like fast fashion or plastic or like, contemporary things that are more convenient. And we
Mm.
forget about the history of how things have been done before, like you said, like with porcelain pans, or I've seen glass pans also.
Ooh, the French, yes.
Yeah. Oh my
Have
God.
those. Those are
Um,
very nice.
I think it's really important that there are people like you who are making things by hand and doing them in traditional methods because it helps preserve this legacy of like you said, like slow art making, but also just really being in touch with every level of art making. Like painters used to have to make their own paints. or like they had a studio assistant who made them for them.
Yeah, no,
Like,
if you were an apprentice, that's what you did like for like 2 years straight.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which like I would have enjoyed if it wasn't so toxic. Like I think I would have really had fun.
Oh yeah, lead. Yeah, that's what they used to use a lot. It's like one of the reasons Romans didn't live for that long, but also the medicine was not good, that great. It's like because they use so much lead everywhere, like on the face, like even like in the facial type of like makeup situations.
Oh, so maybe plastic isn't so bad. It's not lead. But
Right.
I guess I'm sort of curious about like you're really interested in, I guess I'm curious how you pick the colors that you produce and whether you're more attracted to an aesthetic color or the kind of history of the pigments. I know you just came out, was it a pipestone that you just came out with that you were really into? What kind of makes you fall in love with a color or a pigment?
I have it here.
Oh, it's so pretty.
It is pretty. Yeah, you have a sample coming your way.
I think I have a big pan too.
And you have a big one, so you can choose if you want to like plein air it or something.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's like Christmas.
It is beautiful. I think it is. It has a very kind of, when I look at these things, they have kind of a dividing history, I would say, because it's like, it is like borderline sacred, a sacred kind of material for Native Americans. And when I look at it, and it's just, there's a reason why it's called pipestone, because that's where the ritual pipes were made out of it.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
But it has a second name, and the second name, oh God, what was the name? So it was named after this. I guess he wasn't a professional painter. He kind of fashioned himself as a professional painter by the last name of Caitlin, I think, or something like that. So he was the one who did like 400 portraits of Native Americans.
Oh wow.
And he actually saw it as advocating for Native Americans.
Okay.
And they're like very like his collection is in Smithsonian. It's just like a good article about like kind of that duality of like he was like very outspoken how like white people were using Native Americans.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like what he was doing was also kind of sort of exploding, them for portraits. And so it's like example of this historic pigment, like that is beautiful, but it's such a kind of like the history, it is what it is, it's just.
Have you read Victoria Finlay's book on color?
Have I? Yes, I have it actually. I have not read it yet.
You have to read it because she has not the novel, but she has like the little book, and then she has a big one that's called The History of Color in Art, I think. And both of those were like very eye-opening to me when I was younger, because it's crazy to me that every single individual pigment has like a history and culture and story, multiple stories associated with them. And I think that's so interesting that like, you might be used to like painting with cerulean or painting with Potter's pink, or like you would have literally no idea, just like I had no idea about the history of pipestone until you just told me that. Like, I think it's important to keep those stories and have an understanding of the materials that you're working with. And like you said, it's kind of a sacred, not just that individual pigment, but like painting is a sacred sort of interaction with nature, as long as you're, using natural pigments, I guess.
Yeah. It is. It's so many things. It's like, it's therapy. It's like borderline meditation, it's like so many things, or it can be so many things from so many different people. And it's just like, and what I often tell, like, because I get customers who are like, well, like I don't have time to paint. And I was like, well, if you just swatch, like that act of like just using the color, and it really doesn't really matter what you use it for. There is something about it, like it unlocks that kind of like something psychological right about it.
Totally. Just using your hands and being physical and off computer is like, again, crazy that we have to like say that or like encourage people to do that. I'm sort of curious how you relate your painting practice to your paint making and ceramic practices, because it seems like those two are very not utilitarian, but like you're creating a product someone else's uses versus painting, which you do for yourself, or for someone else to enjoy the look of something, but obviously isn't like using it. You don't do anything with a painting except admire it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do printing, so we'll see. Like I do some like for myself, I do some printing, so I might kind of utilize that along the way and like some of my designs. But
What kind of prints do you do?
um what did I do? I did a little thing of Lola the dog.
Oh, she's so good.
Let me take it down. I'm gonna, yeah, it's like on my funny wall, which is like I put little projects up in
Oh my
here.
God, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so she's like just like daydreaming, like that's her. So I did a little stamp off it like block printy style, so just to try it out. So maybe I'll do that as a design on like a mug or something like that. So like I am branching out.
That's so exciting. And it's amazing that you're sort of fearless about approaching these very distinct practices that have this wonderful history. And you're just like, I'm going to try everything. And you know what? I need this thing. I'm going to work on it. Or I need this thing. I'm going to work on it. That's,
I think that's also a hunger because like I've been away for it for such a long time, you know, it's just, yeah, just coming back to it all. And I feel like I like everything. I try everything. And I'm just trying to kind of create, I guess, a better just like art supplies for me first and foremost, and then for everyone else who needs them too. So we can create more and better.
It's really beautiful. I have a kind of dumb question, but one that I like, which is how do you create your palettes? How do you pick which colors go together? Because you are very good at doing that.
Oh, thank you. I actually just have a lot of just different yeah, and just different, I guess, underglazes and glazes. And I've got a couple of really interesting and niche glazes from the companies, like literally one man operation companies
Oh my
that
God.
are literally like me making stuff in their home or something. And I've just like I started playing with them. I've lost batches of things.
Oh no.
That's how ceramics work in general. It's like if you've ever watched, there was a British Throwdown. The it's like about like it's like British Bake Off, but about ceramics.
Oh my God. No, I have no idea.
Right? It's wonderful. So they're like they talk about the kiln gods because like if the kiln god is good
Yeah,
to
they're
you, you're gonna
angry.
get like
Yeah.
really good results.
Oh my
And
God.
that's how it is. It's like I do specific kind of like my templates, if
Yeah.
you will. But if I want to branch out, and which I do sometimes, yeah, I've lost things.
Yeah, I guess that's just part of well, is paint making harder or easier in that regard? Like, is it like I assume you haven't, at least recently, you haven't lost like batches of paint because you know what you're doing and you know the ratios, but it seems like
Yeah, I do single because it kind of comes back to your first question, which I did not really respond. Sorry about the paint, how I like see the colors. So I started like trying to do really strictly historic stuff.
oh cool.
Really strictly. Like I totally have pigment from like ancient Herculaneum. Like I sourced it from someone who works on the site, and
Wow.
it's like their job. They're like sourcing for themselves. So they're in restoring business. So it's
Okay.
like legal, you know, everything.
Right.
But it took me such a long time because I wanted to create this specific ancient palette, right? And it was just like I can't keep on doing that. Like, it's like yeah.
So expensive, so niche.
Right. And so I've never done anything of that big, but I have it one day. So I just like, you know what? I'm just like I have so many memories and so many associations. So it's kind of mostly visual.
Got it.
It I can get that pigment, great. If not, it's going to be visual. So my latest one, this Sorrento, has this red one, which is actually an imitation of vermilion.
Okay. I was gonna ask about it because it's so pretty. It's so nice. But
But I'm not going to get a real vermilion for reasons. So
well, I was gonna ask, like, I think there's kind of a stigma against, I mean, historically against mixed pigments because, it's a purity
that's true.
concept. And then there's like, I mean, you want to be able to understand the like pigment you're using and also its individual properties in terms of tinting strength and all these other things. But when you make a mix like that, are you just like, fuck it, whatever, it's beautiful, I'm just gonna make it? Or do you have a sort of different relationship with paint making and purity and like, whatever things people did hundreds of years ago?
I try to go as pure as I can just because from that my own standpoint, I do like convenience colors. I feel like that kind of is something like a lot of people are lazy. It's fine. It's a part of our life. You don't want to mix it. It's like mixed for you. It's okay. But it's kind of nice to kind of not end up with this black void type of situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I try to go as like pure as I can. So but it can get boring. So that's when I kind of just come in with sourcing from very different regions and like different factories. I have lots of Italian stuff, lots of discontinued, lots of vintage pigments. And they all might kind of have like the same number for like index, right? Color index, but they're so different.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that.
One of the palettes I got from you has a discontinued pigment in it, the kind of olivey green.
Was it PG10, I think? Yeah.
Azo, maybe? I don't know.
Azo.
Yeah. But that, and then I got a full palette of ultramarine green from Kramer's. And those are like prized possessions for me because they're literally from extinct or almost extinct pigment lines that like are so hard to get. And they're not just precious because they're scarce, but they're precious because they're historical and they, like everything else, have stories to tell. And I think that's like amazingly cool that you're really interested in stuff like that. I'm sort of wondering, as we're close to the end here, if you sort of have things that you're looking forward to in the future of your artistic practices, multiple practices that you have, and kind of what you're excited for and happy about.
Yeah, I think I am looking at like maybe tile making. I think that's one thing I am looking into currently. Some tiles, maybe something else. I am branching out a little bit out of just artistic. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to see what I'm gonna be. I don't know, man. I'm just expanding. I have like near 300 pigments at this point. So I'm like, I don't have space for that.
Yeah.
Like, I am literally expanding.
I feel that. And I was actually sad when you posted about the new palette and you were like, I'm never gonna make this exact palette again. And I was like,
so sad, right?
I was like, this is sad. Yeah, but then I was also like, maybe that's a beautiful thing that you move on to make other pigments and like not make other pigments, but make other palettes with other pigments. And like, that's kind of beautiful. I also wanted to touch upon the fact that like, I find it really interesting that a lot of the work you do is also very technical and very scientific. Like both ceramics and paint making are very experimental ancient practices that involve a lot of like recipes. And I'm wondering, is there a reason that you're really drawn to these more like sort of technical kinds of art making?
I'm married to a scientist. I don't know. Maybe maybe that's why. I think that might be the reason. Yeah, there you go. Because yeah, I'm more like versed in like languages and like literature and like philosophy and political science.
Oh my God.
But like I have engineers in my family and my husband is a physicist, so like that's why.
Oh my God, that I should have been a physicist, but I'm here instead. And
so I've heard.
Fun. Yeah, exactly. I think that's really interesting. My boyfriend's a computer scientist, and I interviewed him because he's also an art maker but doesn't identify as an artist. And I think it's really interesting sort of what draws people to artistic fields. And like you said, like culturally there's so much backlash against becoming an artist. And I think that's a real stigma that I'm, at least with this project that you're now a part of, like trying to combat. You were talking to me earlier when we were texting about sort of the community and how being in the Bay Area has like shifted, and how you can really relate to some of the things that one of my other podcast guests was talking about. Do you think like the internet kind of community helps a little bit not feel so lonely, given that like the Bay Area isn't as artistic as it used to be?
Used to be, yeah. So I'm kind of lucky. I have lived here for like 5 years. So I gotten some of it. I'm like, I have my local friends who are amazing, and they're very sad because they've seen things change, because they've been born and bred here, and they're like, Berkeley used to be so different. Yeah, so like through them I kind of do feel that, right? But at the same time, yeah, I feel like that is true. Like the way we're connected right now, it really kind of like keeps it together for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel very lucky that because, well, I lived in Berkeley for a year, but we never crossed paths there. But I feel very lucky that I was able to find you online, and have some of these discussions with you about culture and history, and like the value in having different practices. And I really admire a lot of your viewpoints on these things. You've had such an interesting and diverse path to where you are now. Do you have sort of, if you could talk to yourself from 10 or 20 years ago, what do you think you'd say?
I think that every mistake that one makes in their life, like, you should not be embarrassed about it, but you should embrace it. Like, looking back, I don't think I would. It's like, it's not a straightforward path for me. It wouldn't have changed anything, like all my, like, I didn't graduate, with Asian, like Japanese language degree. I didn't, but it was worth it. Like that year I spent understanding and studying and just like expanding my horizons, it was super worth it. Like, it's like your experiences matter.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And that's absolutely a philosophy I ascribe to with my weird past and history and mistakes. I appreciate you being here, and it's really cool to get to know you. And the next time I'm in Berkeley, I definitely want to swing by and see your studio. Do you think you'd be open to giving a lecture on pigments or paint making or anything in the future?
Sure, yeah. No, I can think of other people who are even better than me, but yeah.
Never the point. Everyone has something to offer. What topic are you, maybe this is a good parting question, within the whole field of art that you participate in, what are you most excited about right now and want to talk about?
I kind of love looking at like how women historically related to art, and how they were like not allowed to paint certain subjects.
Like naked people.
Like naked people, but also you were supposed to paint birds and plants. Yes. And like I have a whole experience about that because I buy antique stuff, as you know.
Yeah.
And so I get those turn of the century boxes and I open them. And I can tell you it belonged to a woman.
Yeah.
It was totally middle upper class woman's box, because all you can see birds and paints, and the ones that are missing and been used up, greens. Like,
yeah. Yep.
because that's what they were supposed to paint.
Yeah.